I'm going to get right to the reading. The eternal substance is within you. The atomic theory. Not so long ago, science entertained a premise that certain elements were basic in nature and could not be broken down into other substances. This theory held that base metals such as lead, copper, zinc, and iron were eternal substances in the scheme of things for the reason that each of the atoms of which they were composed weighed so much on a scale of relativity. For some time, this theory propounded that elements on the atomic weight scale were the substances from which all things were made. It was difficult for scientists to account for conscious life with this theory, but they seem to have arrived at some sort of beginning, so they adopted it and proceeded from there. It seemed logical to assume that the smallest basic unit of mass and energy had been discovered in the atom, especially since all the atoms of a basic element had the same characteristics. Previously, the molecule had been suspect as the smallest unit of matter or energy, but with the discovery and statistical classification of the atom, a new era was ushered in. It followed very shortly, however, that scientists discovered that even the atom was composed of other whirling particles, almost a small universe, the electron and the proton. Speculation began as to whether protons and electrons might be freed of the confines of the atom, and one summer's day over Japan, the final result of such speculation bore its fruit. We shall not concern ourselves with the moral implication of science's greatest discovery being used on the battlefields of war, but rather with where we are going now that the elemental theory of atomic weights no longer gives us convenient classifications of basic substances in nature. For when the atom is split, the element disintegrates, and the question is, what happens to it? Mass and energy are one. Thus far, we have only been able to say in general terms that mass is potential energy and energy is potential mass. That a certain weight of uranium, for example, is capable of unleashing a certain amount of power, and that a certain amount of power is capable of creating a certain amount of uranium. And the only possible further conclusion based on pure scientific research is that there is only one substance from which everything physical is made. And there is only one substance from which all energy is made. And this energy or substance is infinite in time and space. It has no beginning and no end, and thus is everywhere at all times. And all of it is anywhere at any time. It has no beginning and has no end, and thus is everywhere at all times. And all of it is anywhere at any time. This may prove to be a substantial dose to digest, but if you're going to throw off the shackles of limited thinking, you must strive to free yourself from conceptions of form, mass, space, and time as ultimate reality. You must say to yourself that you know that the physical world as you see it could not possibly answer the question of your own existence, so the answer must be elsewhere. You must reach into the furthermost recesses of your mind, for the answer is there, and only there, and never in the physical world around you. We now know that matter and energy are one, and that there is only one substance or energy or intelligence in all things. Since in its pure form we can recognize this energy as nothing but invisible power, unintelligible, to our five senses, there is not the slightest valid reason to assume that it is anything else than constant and never changing in its basic nature. That it has always been and always be, in other words, that it is infinite. It is infinite. It is without number. Unity. Now, there can be no space or time in anything that is infinite. Infinity has no beginning and no end, and there are no units within it. Infinity is one and the only one. If you divide infinity into a series of units, you no longer have infinity, but multiplicity instead. Since there are no units within infinity, nothing can be moved from one point to another, and since time is a measure of the movement of a unit through space, there is no time in infinity. Now, what we are saying is essentially this: everything is basically one thing, has no beginning, no end, has no past, no future, but only one eternal now. Einstein has said that since a mass traveling at the speed of light would appear to be everywhere at the same time, the speed of light represents infinity. This premise is a small part of the master mathematician's theory of relativity, which he had stated came to him as intuition or revelation. The entire theory was years in the proving by a group of highly trained mathematicians working night and day. Even now, there is no room for doubt that it is exact. So difficult it is to cope with infinity with finite tools and measurements. Yet few, of any, doubt the basic truth of the theory of relativity today. It is obvious that anything actually traveling infinitely fast would be everywhere at the same time, which could only be one time or all time, and all of whatever was traveling at that speed would be at any particular point, and all of it would be everywhere at all points. Infinity and God. Infinity is a difficult word. Since words are attempts to convey thoughts, the word infinity has come to cover a multitude of so-called unknowables. Today, many people popularly use the word to cover anything that goes beyond their understanding, but it actually is as exact a conception as anything possibly could be. Very probably the most exact conception mankind has ever been able to draw. Infinity is the word. Infinity is the word that science has substituted for God. Infinity is the word that science has substituted for God. That is not to assign to science an irreverent attitude, for scientists as a group of men are the most reverent in creation. Scientists simply cannot work with an unknowable, and religion says that God cannot be known. Infinity says science is that oneness behind all creation that can be known, thus the natural substitution of words. But of course, we are not talking about two different things at all. God is one. Infinity is one. God is everywhere. Infinity is everywhere. God is everlasting now. Infinity is an everlasting now. God knows everything. Infinity contains everything. Religion, biology, botany, chemistry, electronics, physics, and all science, all philosophy, all the thinking efforts of man are but different roads which lead to one common destination, infinity or God, whichever you will. Infinity or God, eternal substance, eternal intelligence, that thing which is everything, and yet it is but one thing, that thing which is everywhere, and yet is in but one place, that thing which is all time, yet it is but one time, that thing which is all form, yet is but one form, infinite, eternal, only one, never changing, that to which all things are known, and in which every physical object has its being. This is God, and all of God is in us this moment, right now, all the moments to come. Infinite, eternal, only one, never changing, that to which all things are known, and which every physical object has its being. This is God, and all of God is in us this moment, right now, and all the moments to come. The grand conception. If we have lost you now, it is only because your conception of the final reality of the physical world is so strong that for the moment it will not dissolve before your efforts to free your mind. If you are floundering, wondering whether this is a dream or substance, fact or fiction, simply keep your resolve and your faith. Calvin said, faith, faith, faith is because I rule. Calvin said that. You could scarcely learn to speak a new language in several months, and this language transcends all others. Be assured of this, all the mystery and complexity will disappear. As you continue to study and meditate, you will one day read again the portions of this book which seems complex and will be amazed at how fundamental and simple they seem to you. For you are gathering from each chapter far more than you know, coming closer to an understanding of your true self, breaking down the finite bounds in your thinking, undergoing an expansion in power and conception that you may as yet be unaware of. Yet you can be sure that when the last chapter reveals the metaphysical secret, which is so simple yet so difficult to grasp, there will be meaning and power in everything that you read in these pages or you are listening to. So let us stand for the moment on the conclusion that there is but one power behind the entire universe, which is everywhere at all times and is the substance from which all things are made. In the next chapter, we shall cover in detail how form is called into being through and by this power, but for now, it is enough to know that the same finite intelligence pervades all life, all vegetable and animal life, and even every inanimate object of our world, such as a rock. This infinite intelligence then is the only mind there is. We are all using it. We can't help using it, for it is one and everywhere and is the stuff from which all things are made. It is as different from the human brain as night is from day. For the human brain is a specific instrument for a specific organism, for specific surroundings, while the intelligence behind all creation cannot by itself be specific in time or place, form or circumstance. Being eternal and unified, it does not recognize these things except as projections of the consciousness that exists within it. One mind only, which is everywhere and everything, this is the subconscious mind. And now today we're able to see it and to experiment with it. And experiment we shall. Make no mistake about it. And so tonight I will end it there. This is kind of close into the chest. Tomorrow we will check out how hypnosis exposes the subconscious. And I wanted to share, because I wanted just to share this. And this is not hitting my chest and saying I'm all this and that. I'm just sharing it. I remember when I lived in an area in Maryland called Pikesville. And where I was living at, it was predominantly what was called Orthodox Jewish, but not necessarily Hasidics. But there were some that were there. And I happened to run into this individual by the name of Norman Posner. Now, Norman Posner was an instructor for the National Guild of Hypnotists. And I came to him for a consultation. And cut to the chase, I was just about to take my test with him to become a hypnotherapist, though I had studied every aspect. And what happened was Norman's son had passed on this certain day, and exactly a year from that date, Norman passed as well on the same day that his son passed. And the son was not sick or anything. I'm bringing this up because even though I could have acquired my license as a hypnotherapist from the National Guild of Hypnotists, I'm trained by a professional as a hypnotherapist myself. I bring that up because I don't have the paperwork, but I've got everything but the paperwork. But then the paperwork means absolutely nothing if you know how to do a thing. I used to wonder to myself, why couldn't I, through auto-suggestion, uh, basically hypnotize myself in terms of the prompts within? And I've studied data to find out why that was not possible. And actually, it was the tone of my own voice giving myself the commands that I needed. But what I have found out was I had given myself, as far as I'm concerned, a spiritual test that most could not come out of it. And what I found out was I could not come out of it 100% unless I recognize who God is, how He's worked in my life all the time without me knowing it, and to recognize that my purpose for being on this planet is to further the kingdom of God in His will, not my will, and to recognize that when I recognize this in my own life through faith and ask for more faith through prayer, then I get more faith. And this makes me pray more, and this increases my faith with works yet unseen by what I predominantly focus upon and keep in front of me. So I'm just thankful, and I want to thank God for allowing me to do this video in my further understanding of who God is, and to recognize there was some data I was studying. It basically says, who do you listen to? So I look at it like this. When I listen to God and I wait on Him, then everything will go smoothly, will flow just like it's supposed to be. And now I'm with it. Tomorrow,